Hello, everybody. I'm Brandon Battick, and this is Disturbing the Priest, and I'm joined by a very special guest, John Gaffney of Lair the Alchemist. What's going on?
Not much, man. Thank you for having me on the show. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, you have a pretty cool podcast and YouTube channel. I love your Sabbath Sunday videos. You do a lot of Black Sabbath talk on your
Yeah,
YouTube channel and
yeah.
podcast, of course. And yeah, 13 is a record that I don't see a ton of people talking about. It was the first Black Sabbath album I ever bought
Wow.
because
Really?
yeah,
Okay.
I'm 26 and I
Okay.
was getting into Black Sabbath like right when this album dropped. So I'm
Wow.
like, all right, well, let me check this album out. So I definitely have a different context when it comes to thinking about this album because
Yeah.
I don't have all the nostalgic stuff. And then this one, I kind of listened to it all at once.
Now
So
let me ask you though, before you got this, had you heard Black Sabbath like on the radio or on YouTube or something?
of course, I knew NIB, War Pigs. I knew the
Okay.
singles. This might actually be the first Black Sabbath album I ever heard front to back.
Oh
And then
wow.
I dove into, the debut and then listened to the whole like discography at once. Every
Wow.
day, I was like, okay, now I'm doing volume four. Okay, Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, Sabotage. Every day I went in, I was so obsessed with this band when I first got into them. But it was so funny, I got the CD box set. It came with a shirt, that
Uh-huh.
someone eventually stole from me, and it's a weird record. It's a really weird album. What is? I'd love to know kind of your perspective, like on just like your thoughts on 13. Where does this album sit for you?
Well, my history with Black Sabbath is a little different than yours. I'm a little older than you, so I've been around. I'm chuckling because you're actually younger than my oldest child. I've discovered Black Sabbath 1980, 1981, right around when Dio was in the band with Heaven and Hell, and Ozzy had released Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman. And Black Sabbath has always been my favorite band. So when I heard that they reunited in 96, I think it was, with Ozzy, and they put out the reunion album in, I should look this up. I should know this.
98, right?
98, was it 98? Yeah. So I think they got together in 96. They reunited, started playing shows again. And then, yeah, you're right. 1998, they released a reunion record. There was talk that all around this period, that they had been working on some music. Now, at this time, Bill Ward was with the band when they first reunited. So there was talk that there was always this sort of rumor and mumbling that they were going to record new music, but it just never came to be. And then we found out that the 13 album was going to come out. Now, originally, boy, I may have this slightly wrong historically, but like when they first announced this, I'm pretty sure that Bill Ward was still involved in it at that point, but he sort of quickly dropped out. And Bill's explanation for it was that he was just handed a contract that was completely unacceptable. So I remember being bummed out that Bill Ward wasn't going to be there. So that was disappointing. But I was still really excited about it. I mean, it's Tony, it's Geezer, it's Ozzy. I was totally waiting for this to come out. And in fact, I'll tell you a funny story. You mentioned the Sabbath Sunday series that I do on my Lair the Alchemist YouTube channel. Well, I do that with my friend Darren, and Darren and I also have a Black Sabbath podcast called Into the Void, a Black Sabbath podcast. But this story is way before any of that stuff ever happened. So the 13 album was coming out, and Darren has Sirius XM radio. And the very first time they played anything from this record, they played it on Sirius XM because I think Ozzy has a show on there, Ozzy's Boneyard or something
Yeah.
like that. So I remember Darren telling me this, like they're going to play a song from the new record. Nothing had leaked from the record. And I had Darren call me, like, call me as soon as you're done listening to it, so you could tell me what it was about. And the song they played was "God Is Dead," and Darren kind of described it to me over the phone and everything. And then it wasn't too long after that that the album came out, and I mean, I was waiting outside at that time, and I'm trying to remember how this all played out. There was a Best Buy exclusive. At that time, Best Buy used to carry CDs. For those that maybe don't know what Best Buy is, if you're not in the US, it's like an electronics store that uh, used to have a really big CD section, and they used to open early on the day of releases, like if there was a big release. So there was a line outside of Best Buy of people waiting to get in to get this CD. And I don't remember exactly how it worked out, but there was like I had to buy two versions of it to get all the songs. I think the Best Buy version had Naivety and Black on it, but it didn't have one of the other three that the regular bonus edition had, or something like that. So somehow I landed up with two copies of it in my hand. Got one at Best Buy, put it in my car, listened to it while I raced to some other store to get the other one, just so I could have all of it. So very excited for it. When I first heard it, I liked it, and I think we're going to do it track by track. I think we're going to talk about each of the individual tracks, and I can go into a little bit more detail with that. I liked it, but there was always this nagging feeling that hasn't gone away over the years. It's only gotten worse over the years. And it was a slight disappointment that they weren't more adventurous with the record. The original Black Sabbath, the original four Black Sabbath guys, the first eight Black Sabbath records with Ozzy, 1970 to 1978, they're all a little bit different. And the band was always kind of evolving, always doing different things. For some people, sometimes it didn't work, like on Never Say Die, the last album with Ozzy in his first run with the band. There's some experimental things on there, and some people don't really care for that. But then Sabotage has experimental stuff on it, like Super Czar, the song with the choir in it. Most people would say they love that, right? That one worked. So sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't, but they were always a band that was sort of moving forward. Even when Dio was in the band, it sounded like the Dio era of the band, when Glenn Hughes was in the band, when Ian Gillan was in the band, when Tony Martin was in the band. And there was something about 13 that it sounded like they were copying themselves too often on this record. And the impression that I got from interviews that I read at that time was is that Rick Rubin, who by this point in time, Rick Rubin had sort of gotten a reputation for being a guy that would come in with a band, a legacy band, an older band that had lost their way, and Rick Rubin would come in and help refocus that band on what made them popular in the beginning. He does this with the Red Hot Chili Peppers. He does it with Johnny Cash. He just does it with a whole bunch of different people. And from interviews that I read, Rick basically sat them down, made them listen to the first three Sabbath records, and said, this is, we're going for this sound. This is, which is fine. I don't mind the concept of like, let's go back to what inspired you early on and try to recreate that magic. But my problem with the record is that there's just moments on here where it's so obvious that they're copying stuff they already did. Loner is NIB. End of the Beginning, the opening riff is Black Sabbath. Zeitgeist is like, if any other band released the song Zeitgeist, Sabbath fans would be screaming from the tallest mountain about how this band stole and ripped off, and it's a blatant ripoff of Planet Caravan. Now, granted, it's their own song, so I guess they can imitate themselves. And some bands like AC/DC have been playing the same song basically for, for like 40 years at this point. I'm a huge AC/DC fan. I also have an AC/DC podcast. So I think I could say that with all due respect. But there was just something, there was always a spirit to Black Sabbath that I think was a missed opportunity here. And without Bill there, it just felt like to me like this wasn't the real final chapter. This was supposed to be the exclamation point on their career, and it just didn't feel like that for me. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't moments and songs on here that I do like a lot of things on here, and I've listened to this album quite a bit, but it hasn't aged particularly well for me. Once sort of the charm of like Ozzy's back and hearing Ozzy with the original guys again, some of the it just hasn't sat as well for me over time, and it's not one that I revisit super often anymore. Every now and then I do, but it just kind of feels like a missed opportunity. A that and now to reinforce that, Geezer has come out and said that he wasn't happy with the way it went down. Tony has said things about it. Ozzy said things about it. So obviously they weren't completely happy with the process and maybe the end results either. So that just reinforces to me that maybe they just kind of weren't, they didn't let them just be themselves. You know, it really felt like, here's the type of record we're going to make, guys. Let's make that record. Let's make a record that sounds like Master of Reality. Like sounds like the first three albums. And sometimes it works. Unfortunately, sometimes it doesn't for
Yeah,
me.
I couldn't agree more with everything you're saying. Yeah, just to jump into it here, I have the vinyl right here, 13
Yeah.
on Vertigo, which is pretty cool, a nice nod. Um, you look at the back here, and I don't see Ozzy's name anywhere. I don't see Tony Iommi's name anywhere, but I see Rick Rubin's name, the same font size as the song titles.
I
And,
never
and,
thought of that and
and,
noticed that, but you're right.
and it's like, I've seen box set unboxings and you get pictures, there's a picture in it of Rick Rubin in bed. I feel like,
Yeah.
there's also the documentary they made about the making of this
Yeah.
record. And I feel like the documentary is about Rick Rubin and not about Black Sabbath. This band should have been treated like the Beatles. They should have just been locked in a room, make the record. You guys are all here. Get Bill Ward in. And I know a lot of people say, Bill Ward is the make or break reason they hate this record. I think there's definitely a lot missing with Bill Ward's absence here, but I don't think it ruins the record. I think there's a lot more here that really hurts this album. Oh my God, the influence of Rick Rubin here, I just cannot stand. The fact that this whole writing process is just him poking Black Sabbath with a stick, being like,
Yeah.
make Sabbath one, make Sabbath one. It's so annoying because it's like, okay, say it's a solid record. Say this record is how I would want it to be, a single disc, every song cut in half in terms of length. Funny enough, the same issue I have with Death Magnetic, another album
Mm.
ruined by Rick Rubin.
Yeah.
Even if this was one disc, even if the songs were all cut in half and they all flowed very nicely, this album will always just be in the debut shadow. There's no individuality on this album whatsoever. Maybe with Damaged Soul a little bit,
Yeah.
but you have that track. That's the one where Bill Ward is missing the most, because if any song could use that like jazz influenced drumming, it's the most bluesy song on the album. It's just such a mechanical record. It really is. You look at if I was Rick Rubin, I would just say, look, and I understand the whole idea of listening to the first three and trying to like revive their career that way. I think where they should have gone off is look at Sabotage. I thought that's my favorite album of all time. I think that's their best album of all time. It took the longest to make. Bill Ward was managing the band. There's a lot of emotion and energy, especially the whole idea of we're getting back, we're showing our revenge, we're starting over. I would be like, look at that record, and I would do a sequel to that, because you look at Technical Ecstasy, you look at Never Say Die. I feel like the band is kind of forcing a direction a little bit with those two records. I kind of do believe with Technical Ecstasy, the band is going for more of a punk thing with Backstreet Kids and everything. And it's like, I would just say Sabotage and just treat this as a second Sabotage. You're back. Sabbath's back. Think of this as starting over again. And yeah, I don't know, man. Also, the production on this album is terrible. Honestly, maybe even arguably worse than Forbidden's production because oh my, it's so loud, it's so
Yeah,
compressed.
yeah.
The
I'm glad you
whole
mentioned that.
record is a wall of distortion. It
Yeah.
really is. I heard that the guitar tracks and the bass tracks were doubled, which that doesn't
Wow.
help, But I don't know. It just seems so uninspired. There's some good riffage here. Also, I learned that in the writing process, really they were just sitting around Tony Iommi's phone on voice memos, I guess, with him playing riffs and then being like, okay, that one, okay, that one, okay, that one. It's like even down to the writing process, it just seems so mechanical, and that's just my
Yeah.
view on this. If, for a little review on this album, that's just how I feel about the overall album of 13.
Well, a couple points to some of the things that you said. You're right, the production is very compressed. Anybody that's watched my channel has heard me rant and rave about the loudness wars and overcompression. And this is right around, I don't remember when Death Magnetic came out, but I think Death Magnetic was maybe like a few years before 13. So Rick Rubin had this reputation at the time for putting out these super loud, super compressed records. So yeah, that is distracting. That is disappointing, which is weird because he's trying to recreate kind of this classic sound. You think he might go for more of a warm, natural analog sound vibe. Also, right around this time, Rick Rubin starts to become this guy who's almost like a guru, shaman. He comes in with the beard and he's barefoot and he lays on the floor and he's just kind of like this. Not to take anything away from him because if you ever have the chance to watch the documentary of the Red Hot Chili Peppers making Blood Sugar Sex Magic, you sort of get a feel for what it is Rick can bring to the table. There's a scene where Flea is playing they've already recorded Give It Away and he's putting the bass line down and his original bass line was like do 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 do, this real busy bass line and Rick's just like laying on a bed or something in the background and he sits up and he goes no 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 man, you can't do that. You got to go boom, ba-doo da, 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 boom, ba-dee da. And as soon as Flea does that, it becomes the song. You know what I mean? It's like so. I mean, I think he does add something, and it's a fair point too. Sabbath tried to defend Rick Rubin here. Sabbath tried to record new music when they first got back together in like 96, 98, in that time period, and they just couldn't do it. They couldn't get themselves in a room to make it happen. So they needed some sort of marriage counselor like figure, some sort of outside person that could get these guys to, and I've heard Geezer talk about this, about how before they even got together, they all had to sit down and they all had to decide we're going to be in the recording studio from this time to this time. We're going to take a lunch break at this time. Lunch break will be 40 minutes long. I mean, because there was no other way to get all these guys together in the room. Now, Bill, I have a conspiracy theory that I have absolutely nothing to base on when it comes to Bill, but I always throw it out there because I just deep inside my gut, I can't help but think that this was part of it. I truly believe that Tony and Ozzy slash Sharon got together and agreed with Rick Rubin on what kind of record they were going to make. This is going to be based off of the first three albums. Geezer, being the laid back guy that he is, just said, yeah, sure. Uh, but I really believe that Bill would have pushed against that. If you've ever heard Bill's solo work, he's a very creative, spiritual guy. And I truly think that this is, I have nothing to base this on, but it's just in my gut that the guys in the band and management said, if we bring Bill into this, he's going to resist making a record that sounds like the first three albums. He's going to be difficult to deal with. Solution, give him a contract he can't sign. That way we say, hey, it was business. And they move on. They get Brad Wilk, who's a good drummer, but Brad Wilk is, I'm sure he wasn't giving any input into the songs. You mentioned Damaged Soul. Damaged Soul is the one moment on here that, yes, I agree, could have used Bill and sounds the most relaxed and the most natural sounding. That's because the story behind that song is that that's what they would jam on to warm up when they came into the studio. It was the guys just jamming, being loose, playing off of each other, and it's probably my favorite song on the record. They should have done more of that. They should have had these guys get together, just let them jam. We'll piece it together afterwards. We'll sit down when we're done and say, hey, this beginning, this ending, this, that, the other thing, and put it together like that. And because of that, I think Damaged Soul is the most natural or most organic sounding song on here, whereas everything else kind of sounds like they're, let's try to have something that sounds like After Forever.
Right.
They're just like sort of forcing these bits and pieces in there. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. It's, again, like exactly what I'm thinking. I agree with you there. With Bill, that makes a lot of sense. I think that's a very valid conspiracy theory to have. I can't really see him going along with a lot of this, but, and let's jump into the tracks here. We'll rank them worst from best. And I just want to say this before we jump into it. The reason why I kind of want to do this is because before, when people talked about 13, they would always say potentially the last Black Sabbath album.
yeah,
Now it is. Now this is the cap of the discography, and that is a fact. I don't see them ever going into the studio again. Um, I would love to see Tony go into this like studio. You know how he's like remixing all these records right now.
yeah,
Allegedly, he's remixing Born Again. I think 13 needs that treatment more than Born Again, more than Forbidden, more than the Tony Martin stuff. I'd love him to go in and even tweak some of the songs, like make them a little
yeah,
tighter, mess with the length. Also, not crazy about the cover either. I
yeah,
know it's um, famously Black Sabbath has always had pretty bad album covers, so I guess it fits. But yeah, I guess I heard that the reason it's called 13 is that the label wanted them to make 13 tracks, I guess, so they kind of just called it 13 as a bit of a diss, I believe, if that's a confirmed
yeah,
rumor. And I know the label did have a lot of like demands, which I think also hurt this record. It's like, why is this isn't a new wave of British heavy metal band? This is Black Sabbath. Like this isn't a hair metal band. This isn't
yeah,
like this band should have been treated like the Beatles, because for metalheads, they are the Beatles. They really are. And one of the most influential bands ever. Um, but anyway, I think we should get into the tracks, and,
yeah.
and we'll work them worst from best. And of
All right, so
course,
we're including the bonus
we're
tracks in
including
this
the bonus tracks, which is
Methodemic, Peace of Mind, Pariah, and Naivety in Black.
yes.
Okay.
So hey, if you want to kick us off here.
Yeah, okay. So, all right, off the top of my head, I'm gonna have to say Zeitgeist just because it is such a take on Planet Caravan. It just irritates me beyond belief when I hear it. Even from the first time I heard it, I was like, I can't believe this. Like it's just Planet Caravan. There's even the little finger cymbal sounds and like I mean, it is such a copy by numbers song that I just can't get past it. I can't think of any other song in the Sabbath catalog that is that much like any other song in the Sabbath catalog. You know, I mean, even some people may not like the Tony Martin era or certain aspects of the Tony Martin era. but it's not like I can say like, oh yeah, they were just trying to. That's a straight up copy of the song Sabbath Bloody Sabbath or something like that. No, I never hear that. So for me, Zeitgeist just is sort of symbolizes the problem that I have with this record. I don't really like the lyrics either. The lyrics seem forced, and Ozzy's delivery on it seems kind of forced too. Again, it just doesn't work for me. So yeah, I'm gonna put Zeitgeist as my least favorite.
Yeah, you get the bongos in there too, and that jazzy
Yeah,
guitar solo at the
exactly. I
end.
mean, which hey, I love to hear Tony. See, this is where I wish like he had taken more like the concept. Like, okay, you guys are playing this mellow tune and Tony's doing like a jazzy solo. So they could have just done it some other way and gotten that in there,
Like
like an
Solitude.
acoustic. Yeah, I mean, I don't
Yeah.
know. I mean, you're right. Solitude is sort of like Planet Caravan, but it doesn't feel like it's just a carbon copy of
Because
it.
there's no bongos, right?
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it's the same idea like it's a
Uh,
mellow song and there's no real drum beat or anything in it, but it still feels not like this. This is just like a straight up rip off.
all right. Yeah. So I'll jump into my bottom. I'm going to have to go with Peace of Mind. And I'm just saying this because I just feel like it's not as memorable as other tracks. Like, yeah, you got some heavy grooves with some, I guess, some good replay value with the runtime. Funny enough, it's one of the shorter tracks on the album. But yeah, it just doesn't really stand out for me. Something like Zeitgeist, I totally understand where you're coming from, but I do like the jazzy solo at the end. There's a lot of stuff I do appreciate from it, but there is that overwhelming sense of I've heard this before with Zeitgeist. But Peace of Mind, it's something that I find even worse than that, where it's just not super memorable to me. So I mean, Peace of Mind. So I'm going to go with Peace of Mind as my bottom. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm gonna go with Pariah next for me because I hate that line. I'm your Messiah. I'm your pariah. It's just kind the main riff is okay. I don't really like Ozzy's vocals in it, his melody line, his delivery. But again, outside of like the main opening riff, it's just forgettable for me. So I'm gonna say Pariah.
yeah.
For how many songs do we have all together here? We've got 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. How do we not have 13? There's 8 on the original record, then 9, Methodemic Peace of Mind Pariah, that's 11, and then Naivety in Black is just 12. All right, so my number 12 was Zeitgeist, my number 11 was Pariah.
Well, I'll be right there with you. My number 11 is Pariah as well. Hey, I do like that main riff. It's bouncy, it's fun, it's got a good groove to it. There's some cool dynamics on this song too, especially with like
Yeah.
the softer later half on Pariah. There's some also like cool vocal effects on Ozzy's voice, which is it's just such a nice breath of fresh air on this album with everything just sounding the same. But yeah, the like, I'm your whatever, like that, just that
Yeah.
rhyme, the chorus, it's just like, come
I'm
on.
your pariah for your desire. Ain't no messiah, just your pariah.
Like this band has some of the best lyrics ever, and that
Yeah.
just stands out. It really does. But yeah, that's my second to last right there.
Okay, so for my number 10 out of 12, I'm going to go with what you said before, Peace of Mind. It's it's just forgettable. I mean, in their defense, it was a bonus track, so I kind of see why it didn't make it onto the record. Uh, it's just forgettable. It's just not a lot to it. I mean, Tony Iommi doesn't write bad riffs, but he has some riffs that are better than others. and and this one just kind of falls flat. And a lot of it too is like Ozzy's vocal and Ozzy's melody line.
Yeah. I feel like a big issue is that some of these songs just seem like very stitched together, where instead of just like a natural flow to the like riffage and stuff, it just seems like they're on their phone. They're like, okay, these are five good riffs. Let's just all shove them into one song.
Yeah.
Where you look at like a song like The Writ that has so many dynamics to it and so many riffs, and it feels like it just flows so well. Where a lot of the tracks on here like just feel so stitched together. And I think, when you look at Pariah, when you look at Peace of Mind, I feel like those are two examples of that, where it kind of feels clunky. It's not super memorable. And like the riffs are good, but I don't know. I think maybe this whole track list, when you were talking 12 songs, I think you could have cut the whole track list in half, cut all the
Yeah.
songs in half, and taken just all the best riffs from everything and put it into like a really solid single disc. But even that really wouldn't have identity. But anyway, my next one, I'm right here with you, Zeitgeist. Our bottom three is the same. Different, kind of a different order though. Yeah, trippy lyrics, which is just again, Planet Caravan clone. The bongos are cool, I guess. I'm kind of a sucker for this song a little bit. If I do listen to Planet Caravan and I'm chilling and I like the atmosphere and the song, I might follow it up with Zeitgeist because it is just an extension of Planet Caravan. Uh, yeah, and I feel like this does kind of hit a little hard with Ozzy's death, especially with some of the lyrics. But yeah, it's just that the lyrics aren't crazy memorable or just like stand out in terms of this record. So yeah, Zeitgeist.
All right, next for me, number nine, I'm going to say Methodemic. I actually think this is a pretty decent song, and they played this live, so they obviously thought it was a pretty decent song. And I think this could have been on the record. It's also the first bonus track, so that tells me that they thought it was the best bonus track. But this is where Rick Rubin's production, man, is just headache inducing. It's so loud, it's so fatiguing on the ears. It's a bummer. I wish this album, you mentioned Tony remixing it. I would be happy just like give us a more dynamic range version of this record with more dynamics because this one it just gives me a headache when I listen to it because of the production. So, which is a bummer because I think it's a pretty decent song. So, and unfortunately, some of these songs are landing low on my list for semantic reasons, like this one, the production. Zeitgeist landed low because of the color by numbers vibe to it. But yeah, the Methodemic, it just kind of gives me a headache when I listen to it.
It does kind of sound like a 6 minute car crash,
Yeah.
because the production is just so loud in your face. I'm gonna go with Live Forever next. Even though it's one of the shortest songs on the record, after listening to it once, it feels like you've heard it three times in a row. Uh, Good chorus, and I do like the melodies on here, but I just wish there were more dynamics with Live Forever. It's just a bit too repetitive for me, and just that riff that just goes on and on and on, which I guess, the song is called Live Forever. It feels like the song does go on forever, but yeah, that's going to be my next pick, Live Forever.
All right, number eight for me, I'm gonna go with Loner. Again, sounds way too much like NIB. There's even that sort of quiet part. I wonder if the loner can assimilate a lifeless.
Uh-huh.
And there's one line in here that I really, the opening line, he's just a loner. He never says hello. A friend to no one. He's got no place to go. It's, I don't know. Again, another one that it's hard for me to get past the
Yeah.
fact it loses serious points for me because it is so obvious. And it would be one thing if like they said, okay, main riff has an NIB vibe. Let's not go back to NIB for the rest of the song. But the fact that there's that quiet section, just like in NIB, to me, that is just like, come on. You're making it just so obvious that hey guys, let's write a song that sounds just like NIB. It's like the same tempo. That said, I love Iommi's guitar solo in this one, and I think Tony has a really great guitar solo sound on this. I really like his lead sound on this, and I think he has a great lead on this one. But This one loses style points for me for again the just the play by numbers, obvious copying of a of an older classic.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Next, I'll be right there with you with like kind of the same thing, beginning of the end. Way too long, way too long. Uh, an issue I do have with this album is, or end of the beginning. I mean, an issue I have with this record is I really don't like the track list order. I think it just starts off like with two like 8 minute songs.
Yeah.
Um, it's just I don't know, but great shredding here. I'll give it that. But I feel like this is just a great example of Rick Rubin just being like, "Be Sabbath one, be Sabbath one."
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, good riffs. I really like the second half of the song. I feel like maybe the first half could have been cut in half, and then there's some like fun grooves in the second half. Um, but I just don't return to this one because I rather just listen to the Black Sabbath by Black Sabbath. You know, if
Yeah.
I'm to choose, uh, uh, um, if I was to judge it in a vacuum, though, it's pretty good. I think the issue is the runtime. Like, there's some good riffs for sure, but this is such a hard album to judge because it's like, should I just write it all off because it's Sabbath one, or am I supposed to judge these like in a vacuum? But I'm gonna have to go with end of the beginning for my next one.
All right, for me, number seven, I'm gonna say Live Forever for the reasons you mentioned. I think it's just kind of forgettable. It kind of goes by you. I mean, it's not horrible, but I don't know. It's just it's not one of the stronger ones. I
Yeah.
think it's a little too repetitive and it just doesn't have anything particularly special about it. So I'm gonna put that at number seven for me.
Yeah, to keep going, I'm gonna have to go with Loner. It's nice for Black Sabbath to like write a song about their fans. It's like you look at this song and like the lyrics, and then you look at the lyrics of like Johnny Blade. This song
Yeah.
is such a de-evolution. It really is. Johnny Blade is just, it's like the lyrics are so good. Um, and then here it's just, yeah, like everything you're saying, like doesn't talk to people. Wow, you really went poetic with that line. Um, but yeah, it's just NIB. It's just NIB. I don't know. One of the shortest songs on the album. I feel like it's paced really nicely, though. I really do like the riff, even though it's ripping off themselves. Um, but maybe it's paced really nicely because it just has the same structure as NIB, which I'm going to have to take points off for that. But yeah, Loner.
All right, I'm gonna say for my number six, Naivete in Black. This is the highest ranking bonus track for me. I really like that main riff. I think that main riff is super cool. That's what really sells it for me. And just the vibe of it. And it's pretty short too. It's 350. So that would have made it the shortest song. That's out of Peace of Mind. Peace of Mind is 340. Naivete in Black is a tiny bit longer, but I think it hits pretty well. It comes in, it has a lot of energy to it. I like the vibe to it. It's a little different than the other ones, so it kind of makes me think like, maybe this was a direction they could have gone in if they wanted to, if they were trying different things or something like that. It's kind of strange that it landed up. I think pretty sure this one was the Best Buy. Yeah, this one was on the
Yeah.
Best Buy exclusive. So if you bought the just the regular CD, bonus CD, you didn't get this one. You had to go to Best Buy for this, right? And Peace of Mind, Pariah. Yeah. So yeah, this one for the main riff and just kind of the feel and vibe of it, I think is pretty cool.
I'm going to be right there with you. Activity in Black, whatever the hell it's called. Just NIB, I guess.
Yeah.
Uh,
And it's fun that they're playing on the NIB thing. You know what I mean? That's also cool.
it is. It kind of is. I'll be honest. I feel like this feels like a Tony Martin era Sabbath song.
Yeah, that main riff, you're right.
Yeah,
It really
it
does.
reminds me of Cross Purposes a little bit. Great main riff, which kind of carries the whole song. If you really remove the riff, there's nothing really else, I think, worth noting on that track. Um, I wish it was a little more polished, to be honest. If they just really focused on this track, I feel like it could have been one of the best on the album. It also just ends abruptly. It just ends. It feels like you're listening to like a work in progress track. Like I don't know why it just cuts off.
Yeah, yeah,
But yeah, it feels like something across purposes. I hear a little TV crime in there too at times. This
yeah.
feels like it could have been sung by Dio, Tony Martin, but just kind
Yeah,
of.
you're right. The main riff is very much like on Cross Purposes. What is that song? It's like towards the end of the record. I forget. There's a
Oh
song on
yeah,
Cross Purposes where this main riff really has that
yeah.
vibe to it. I'd have to think about it, but
Well, if it comes up, let me know because I know what you're
yeah.
thinking of. And that's the song I'm imagining in my head, but I'm just blanking on the title.
Evil Eye maybe or
Yeah,
Cardinal Sin. It's like one of the ones towards the end
I'm
of
thinking
Cross
Evil Eye.
Purposes. Yeah. All right, so my number five, and pretty much from this point out, I do really like I do like these songs from this point out. Is going to be Age of Reason. Uh, I think the main riff is pretty cool. Uh, Lyrics are pretty good, pretty catchy. Main riff is heavy. I kind of like that drum beat at the beginning. So yeah, this lands at number five for me.
Nice. I'm gonna have to go with God is Dead. Uh, Great lyrics here. I do feel the length of this track though, especially the first part. This is about a 9 minute song. It does not need to be 9 minutes. I really just like end of the beginning. I do really like the second half. Amazing grooves here, amazing fun grooves on the second half. If you get to it, it's a bit of a marathon. Uh, this is kind of my favorite performance of Ozzy on the album. It seems like he's just like having fun here. You can tell he's like passionate about this song. There's even like on the interviews where they're like, Ozzy, you can't sing about God is dead,
Yeah.
and everything. And I feel like there's a bit of Sabbath, like true Sabbath that comes out of this and not just being like, we're doing War Pigs.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, great vocal inflections from him. I love the line, give me more wine. I don't need bread,
Yeah.
even though it's a
Yeah.
little like whatever, but it's just fun. And Ozzy just delivers it really well. But God is Dead is my pick there.
Yeah, number four for me is going to be God is Dead. This would have been the first song that I heard from the record. I like Ozzy's delivery on this. I like kind of the moody intro. The song title itself is provocative. It sort of gets you thinking. It's a little edgy, which is cool. And would a lot of people fail to, there's a question mark next to the God is dead, question. But the lyrics I think are really good. Lost in the darkness, I fade from the light. Faith of my father, my brother, my maker and savior, help me make it through the night. I love that line too. Give me more wine. I need the bread or whatever that line is. That's really cool. And the song builds really well. Like when it gets to that fast part, Geezer has like that little kind of bass solo where he's doing like all the bass fills and everything. That's super cool. So it's just a song that it builds really well. You're right, it is kind of long, but I think Ozzy sounds really good on this one. This is one of his best performances on the record. So I kind of see why they released this as the first song because it kind of has all the Sabbath elements you might want. It's got sort of the dark, gloomy, creepy beginning. It some tempo changes, some busy bass playing, good guitar solo. Ozzy sounds good on it. So yeah, this comes in at number four for me.
Cool. My next pick is where our list definitely differs. Methodemic for me. I think this should have kicked off the record, in my opinion. Um, Pretty powerful song, a cool, ominous acoustic intro that just explodes into this like really fast, heavy riff, which is pretty much what the whole song revolves around. Um, Probably could have been shorter, to be honest. But I think the riff is one of my favorites off the whole album. I just love the energy here. A bonus track for some reason. There's some cool vocal effects on Ozzy's voice in the later half. I really love the song, and they played it live, which is crazy. That the
Yeah.
bonus track on this album
Uh-huh.
was what they chose to play live. It feels like already it shows me that they really had no choice in what was and wasn't a bonus track. You know, because I feel like if it
Yeah.
was up to Tony Iommi, this would be on the album and not just be a
Yeah.
bonus.
Yeah.
Um, Especially since he wanted to play it live. But anyway, Methodemic for me.
All right, number three for me, and this is again where we differ. I have Into the Beginning, and I know that that opening riff is very much a nod to the song Black Sabbath, but I would have been okay if this record, if that's where it kind of ended with this, because okay, it's potentially the last Black Sabbath record, and you start off with a song that's got a vibe sort of the very first song off the first Black Sabbath album, and it also has that play the riff really heavy, then play the riff really quiet, for the verse thing. But it's just a killer riff, man. I can't deny that that opening riff is just crushing, man. It's doomy. It's really powerful. And I remember hearing the record for the first time and thinking like, "Whoa, here we go." Like, between God is Dead and this, it was like this is going to be a real doomy, dark, heavy record. So, it was obvious that they were nodding to the song Black Sabbath, but it's far enough away from it for me that I'm okay with it. Maybe I'm just trying to justify it in my head, but I also love Ozzy's delivery on this. I
Yeah.
love that line, "Is this the end of the beginning or the beginning of the end?" Then I love probably my favorite moment of Ozzy on the record when he does that line, reanimation of the sequence. He goes, he puts that sort of like sound in his voice on that line, and it's just great. I love at the end of it where it very much goes into kind of like a Dirty Women, the end of Dirty Women, which Tony famously used to always do his extended guitar solos on the outro of that song. So the end of the song has kind of a Dirty Women vibe to it. Uh, Tony's solo is fantastic. And I love that part where Ozzy, "I don't want to see you." Yeah, he goes way up in his range. He spends a lot of time kind of lower in his range on this record. It doesn't sound like he's really pushing himself. I haven't checked this, but I'm going to guess that that's the highest note he sings on this record. Kind of wish he pushed himself a little bit more. At the time in the press, he said he deliberately sang this stuff a little bit lower so that he could pull it off live, which of course they played some of this stuff like on the immediate tour and then they just dropped it and went back to the first three, four records like they
Yeah.
always did, right?
Yep.
Which is just totally disappointing. But
Yeah. Unfortunately.
yeah, so for me, yeah, it's definitely nodding to their past, but it kind of works for me on this one. And I just love that opening riff. I like Ozzy on this. I love Tony's soloing. So that comes in at number three for me.
Yeah, I love so much of that song. It's such a marathon for me. And like that
Yeah, it
riff is
is.
so heavy, but when it does go to the quiet, like single note section, I'm like, come on, you know. But yeah, the some of the vocal inflections from Ozzy there are amazing. So next up, I'm gonna have to go with Age of Reason. Pretty powerful start here, a lot of cool tempo changes. Lyrically, I think is very, you know, it represents today's world pretty well. And it's like just that classic Sabbath of like some like cool commentary like that. Maybe the best solo on the whole album, potentially. Really memorable, has that classic Tony Iommi sound to it. Just stays fresh. I feel like it doesn't overstay its welcome at all. But Age of Reason, I think, is a pretty solid track from them.
All right, number two for me is going to be Dear Father. I think these are some of the most poignant lyrics on the record. A childhood innocence was drowned in your tears. The demons that you fought are feeding your fears. I mean, these are, wow, dear Father, forsaken, you knew what you were doing in silence. Your violence has left my life in ruin. The nods knowing that Geezer, was raised Catholic, and I'm sure this is pointing the finger at some of the stuff that's gone on there. I mean, these are really like powerful, dark lyrics. And when that chorus kicks in, man, the way Ozzy sings out and that guitar line underneath it, it's just so cool. It's just a really, it feels like too many of the lyrics on here feel like they're kind of throwaway. Loner who never says hello, they're just like just kind of thrown out there. But this one sounds like, I'm assuming it's Geezer, put a lot of thought into this, and I just think it holds a real emotional kind of wall up to it. It's just a real kind of dark intensity to the song. I don't think that thunderclap and everything at the end. I mean, I know why they did that because it's a nod to the first record. Their last record ends where the first record began, but it doesn't fit the mood of this particular song. They could have put some other sound effect on there, and I think it would have been a lot more powerful. So I kind of wish that that thunderclap thing wasn't at the end of it. I think that that's silly. And on the Geezer has even said he's like, I didn't know they were going to put that on there. When I heard the record for the first time I heard it, I was like, what is this? Why did they do that? So this doesn't make sense for me. And if you listen to, I call it 14. I mentioned to you before we started recording, they put out this CD, The End, that had four other songs on it. And it had 4 or 5 live songs on it and a couple of the songs from 13 live. And what's the song on there? I'm drawing a blank. There's a song on there that ends with the thunderclap in the rain and everything, and it just makes way more sense. It fits the mood of that particular song, which makes me think like, oh, they probably thought they were going to put that song as the last song, and then they changed their mind, but they still wanted the thunder and the rains and the bell, so they just shoehorned it in at the end of Dear Father. But it just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't fit. But all that said, still a great song. The lyrics are just so like, dark and intense when you really read them and really think about what these lyrics are about. It's pretty heavy stuff. So yeah, I always like this one, Dear Father, number 2 for me.
Uh, cool. I'm gonna have to go with Damaged Soul for my number 2. This track actually has some identity to it for once on this album. It's just such a nice breath of fresh air. It has this loose, bluesy style to it that for me justifies the length. Amazing lyrics from Ozzy. I know some people kind of are critical on the lyrics, especially like the first line of the song. It just seems a little like stereotypical.
Mm.
But I do enjoy it. This track, I know Age of Reason has, I think, one of the best solos on the album, but like the shredding on this, I love the soloing. I really love this song. I love all the riffs on here. Maybe, if they really wanted to do a Sabbath uh, one, they should have just made this song like 16 minutes and just had it close the record,
Yeah.
like on the first album.
Yeah, like Warning or right, something
Exactly.
like that. Yeah.
I feel like people would like this album even more, even though that is copying that record. Like, it's like, might as well just go all in at that point. But Damaged Soul, I just love. And it's a song where, like, over time, I feel like, if anything, I've just appreciated it even more. But that's my number 2.
Yeah. Okay. So that leaves my number 1 is Damaged Soul, and all the things you said. It kind of makes me think what this album could have been if they had just let the guys do their thing. I don't think you need to force Tony Iommi to return to his blues and jazz roots. He never really left them. It's not like Tony Iommi has been playing in a Latin jazz band for the last 25 years, and you're like, whoa, this guy's so out of touch with like, he hasn't done anything heavy in 20, 30 years. No, this is natural for these guys. So, and this to me is the essence of kind of what early Black Sabbath was about. Was their influences were the blues and jazz, and taking that and making it really dark and heavy. Think of Wicked World. Da 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 do da 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 do da da da. I mean, that's a big band swing line. I mean, that's jazz. That's just straight up jazz. But they combined it with, the world today is such a wicked, it's the blues, but they made it really
So heavy.
dark and really heavy. And they just do that here. And Iommi soloing on this one is just like, whoa. His lead sound is so great. It feels like your ear is like right up next to his strings. Like you can hear his fingers like moving on the strings. He does this thing at one point where he like kind of slides up and hits like this really high note for like a second. And it's just like, man, he just sounds amazing. And the lyrics, maybe they're a little cliche, but I'm okay with that. This is what kind of early Sabbath lyrics were like. Born in a graveyard, adopted by sin, I cultivate evil that's living within. A preacher tried saving my black damaged soul, possessed by a demon that had full control. I mean, yeah. I mean, this is like NIB lyrics. This is
Yeah.
like the first album. I mean, come on, bring this on. And it's just too bad that they couldn't have recognized this and maybe push the guys in this direction because this feels like they're not thinking. That's the way to say this. This song feels like they're not thinking. They're just playing. Too much of the other stuff sounds like they're thinking. They're like trying to work it out somehow, whereas this is just natural. And again, if Bill Ward was here, it just would have added just that even another little percentage point to make it sound even more like the original band. So yeah, this is one I'd love to listen to this. Tony just again his lead playing is just fantastic on this. And just again, it's that Sabbath combining the blues, making it really dark and heavy sounding. So yeah, I love this one. I could have flipped Dear Father, those two. It could be one or two for me because without question, those are my two favorite songs on the album. So
Me too. Me too. I could honestly flip either or because some days I go to one or the other. There's definitely a lot to appreciate in both. Obviously, my number one is Dear Father. Best riff on the album, just that opening riff, the dun da 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 da. So
yeah,
good. Almost like Master of Reality esque.
yeah,
I love the groove on this song. It's just so nice. Very dark lyrics. I know Geezer, he was a Catholic, as you said, and there was actually a priest in his church who I believe was moved around, and it stuck with him. And he talks about it in the lyrics here, and I think they're so well. It's very like original. It doesn't feel like they're just trying to capture the same lyrics as Sabbath One. Um, they're very organic. Uh, yeah, when it comes to the sound effect at the end, it doesn't make a lot of sense because when you look at like the first album going into the song
yeah,
Black Sabbath, the context of it really adds to the atmosphere and everything. Where this was all Rick Rubin's idea. I know that where he's like, oh, we got to put the sound effect at the end.
yeah.
Where I think now that this is their final album, I can at least appreciate that. Does it really have anything to do with like an evil priest? No.
Yeah,
But yeah, I like this one and I like the length. I feel like this this has like a justified length to it, and I love it, man. Like great closer, really great closer on this album. But by the time you get to it, you're like, all right, it's been like an hour.
yeah.
Is it worth what is it? It's a long song. I don't remember the length of it off the top of my head, but it maybe could have been a little shorter, maybe, but
720.
720 minutes. I don't know.
Dear Father
Yeah,
is
maybe that's
720.
justified. Maybe that's justified. I never listen to the song and feel like it's overstaying its welcome or it's like I get to the point. Every riff I feel like counts here. Every note I feel like counts. um you know Ozzy has this scream in it too,
Yeah,
that goes to this more upbeat section. um like, do you deny that your response, like all that, those verses,
Yeah.
and it's so good. The song has like this driving beat to it at the end. I love Dear Father is a great track. And yeah, the issue with this album is like there are good songs, Damaged Soul, Dear Father, but I feel like it's almost worse than Born Again, because Born Again is like, at least people are talking about it. You either love it or you hate it. And
Yeah.
that's created a discussion where this album nobody talks about. And I feel like it's completely forgotten because it is kind of forgettable. And I hate to say that about an album by my favorite band, especially that this is their last album, but yeah, there's some good stuff on there. But yeah, that's our ranking of the track list there. That was a lot of fun. That was hard for me, actually. I'm not sure how you went about ranking these songs, but I actually had some difficulties. I changed my list like maybe 8 times.
As it is with all these things, so as soon as you think about it, the your top two, three, four immediately come into your head, your three, four, five favorites, and then your least favorites, like your one or two least favorites come into your head right away. And then it's always just stuff in the middle where you can kind of shuffle it around slightly. But yeah, it is a record that I think just because of their catalog, there's just more interesting things to talk about in their catalog than that, as far as revisiting, albums like Born Again and I don't know, maybe in time 13. Well, it's kind of if you haven't heard the other four songs, bonus tracks, like you should check those out too. And I think between the various bonus tracks, that gives you 8 bonus tracks. You could almost have another album in itself, with that, or if you had swapped a couple in and out on 13, put the others on what I call 14, what could have been the next record. Maybe it would have been a little different. Maybe if the production was a little different, maybe if again they had done this, done that, but it is what it is, and it feels a little disappointing that it's the last Black Sabbath record. It's in some ways you understand why some bands are so cautious to do things like this because when you have a legacy that's been around for so long and albums that people have lived with for decades, it's really hard to it's really hard to beat that. You're not the same person you were when you were 20 some years old. Now these guys are all in their 70s, 60s, 70s. It's they've changed and so it's a very hard, tricky thing to maneuver. So I want to say this album was like a 0 or anything out of 10. I'd probably call it like a 6 out of 10, a 5 out of 10, something like that. There's things I like about it, things I don't. It's Ozzy, so I love Ozzy's voice. So just for the sheer enjoyment of hearing Ozzy singing with Tony and Geezer, sometimes I put this on and just really enjoy it because it's those three guys, and those guys could sing Christmas carols, and I would probably still enjoy it.
Right. There's a reason I've listened to this album like a lot. I have the CD as well. I bought the record. There's a reason I do, because I do actually enjoy a lot of the stuff on here because it's Black Sabbath at the end of the day, even if they're just doing a parody of themselves. It's still good. It's still Black Sabbath. It's still Tony Iommi on the guitar. It's Ozzy. I really do appreciate a lot out of it. If I was to give it a ranking, I might have to be right there with you with a 6 out of 10, just about a 6 out of 10, about an average record, I think.
Now,
Um,
let me ask you, you've heard the first 8 Sabbath records, right? With Ozzy.
yes, of
How would
course.
you rank this against the first 8 solo records? Is it better than any of the first 8?
Of Ozzy solo.
No, no, Sabbath with Ozzy.
Oh,
The
Ozzy
first
era
8
Sabbath,
Sabbath
right.
Ozzy era stuff.
Um,
Is this album better than any of the first 8?
okay, doesn't touch any of them. doesn't
Okay.
touch Technical Ecstasy, doesn't touch Never Say Die.
Okay. Those are the ones usually in question.
I'm
Like
even
some
gonna
people don't like Never Say Die. They don't
I
like
love
Technical
Never Say
Ecstasy.
Die. All the hate to that album, I will never understand. I think it's some, I don't know how you feel about it, but I just think it's some
Oh, I
like
love it.
narrow
Yeah.
minded thinking of like, I think that jazzy Sabbath, the big band Sabbath, I love. Johnny
Yeah.
Blade, Swinging the Chain. Come on, it's a good record. Never Say Die.
Junior's Eyes.
Junior's
Yeah, for
Eyes.
sure.
Come on.
I
But
did a
anyway,
video on my channel in defense of Never Say Die, and it's me, Darren, John McKenty from the band Incantation, and a somebody else was on it. Yeah, Steven from Rock Fantasy has a channel called Rock Fantasy Files. And we're all Never Say Die fans, and we basically came on and just, stood up and defended Never Say Die because yeah, it's a record that I do really like too. So I was just curious because like you said, you just started listening to Black Sabbath heavily not that long ago, compared to me. So I was curious to see how you felt about 13 compared to the original 8 albums.
and I'll even say this: I think Born Again is way better than this album. Where I know that's
Yeah.
a little controversial, but in terms of like loud or just like bad production, I mean, uh, Born Again over this because I feel like the production adds something where
Yeah,
this is
yeah, it does.
just loud and
Yeah.
distorted and
Yeah, it doesn't add to
compressed
the atmosphere, whereas Born
at
Again,
all.
that sort of cloudy mix in some ways sort of adds to it. But I'm the same way. I would put 13 down with like Forbidden. I'm not quite sure what I would put at the very bottom if I'd put Forbidden or 13, but they would be I like the Dio records better than this. Seven Star, that's also in the bottom of my Sabbath list, but I think I still like it better than 13 and pretty much most of the Tony Martin stuff, save for Forbidden. That's my least favorite of the Tony Martin era. So,
Yeah, Headless Cross is way better than 13.
oh God, yeah.
I think this is maybe one Ice-T feature away from being the worst Sabbath album. But anyway, let's wrap things up. John, thank you so much for being
Yeah,
on the podcast. Really appreciate it,
yeah.
man.
Thank you. Thank you for
Um,
having me on.
Go check out his channel and his podcast. I'm Brandon Battick, and this has been Disturbing the Priest.